Hello, everyone, and welcome to our fourth meeting of Literary Talks, a project that we undertake with the class Contemporary Literature in English at the Universidade Federal do Mato Grosso do Sul, here in Brazil. Every meeting that we have, we invite some people that are related to the field of literature, especially contemporary literature. And tonight we have the pleasure of having with us, the honor of having with us, um, a writer, a friend, and a person I admire a lot, Marge Piercy. She agreed to be here with us, and the group is going to ask some questions. She's going to answer about literature. Okay. If you have some questions or comments, people from the audience, you have the chat where you can include your questions, and we are going to definitely, if we have time, we are going to include those in the questions asked to our dear writer. Unfortunately, we had some issues here, some technological issues, and we are not, it's not a glitch that you cannot see Marge. We cannot see as well, but we can hear her. So it's going to be more audio because her camera is not showing or projecting her image. So I'm sorry for that. But anyway, we thought it would be best if we had the conversation anyway with her, listening to her and her answers about contemporary literature.
Please
So,
get the dog
first,
out of the room.
yes,
Please.
I think I'm going to turn everybody's microphone off, and when you need, you just turn on your phone, your microphone. So, um, and then we are not going to have any problems with background noise. So doing that, I'm going to be here in the background, and I leave the group to ask questions to Marge. Again, thank you so much, Marge, for being here with us.
Partly there.
Okay, so can you hear me? Is everything okay?
Yes.
I would like to also thank you in representing our group. We are very excited to have this conversation with you for accepting our invitation. And I would like to ask Silmara to ask our first question.
So, what is your question?
Silmara will ask it. Just 1 second.
I'm going to ask you right now. So, good evening. So, I would like to start with the classic question, which is actually very interesting and pertinent, and that is, what were your main literary influences, and how did they shape your writing?
Look, I'm 87 years old. There are no literary influences. You're talking about adolescence. In adolescence, uh, the poets who influenced me the most were the two founders of American prosody in the United States, which is our queer grandfather, Walt Whitman, and our weird grandmother, Emily Dickinson. Uh, for fiction, there were very few things, probably Simone de Beauvoir, because she wrote both about women's lives and larger political and social issues, which is what I wanted to do, and there wasn't much of that, not from women. And in fact, I was writing a book about World War II, and was looking for a new agent, and I went to one of the best literary agents in New York, and he says, "Well, that's not so. Why don't you write a nice love story and use the war as a background?" And indeed, when I wrote about World War II, I was attacked by uh, a couple of male critics for how could I write about war? Well, honey, I've been shot at. I've been under automatic weapons fire. How about you? it's so those if you want literary influences, that's about it. I loved James Joyce. I must have read Ulysses 3 or 4 times. But I can't say it influenced me particularly. Who's next? Hello, hello. Are we still on?
We are. It's going to be me. Thank you so much for asking for answering our question. Now, since we're talking about writing and influences, we would like to know more specifically how does the process of you writing a new text work? How does this process work? And what inspires you to write? And what do you do after you're done with the project? And how do you edit it?
I'm not quite sure. There's a lot of questions in there. All right, where do my ideas come from? They come from my life, from my friends, from experiences. I'm somebody who's had a rather rich and complicated life with a lot of experiences. And it comes from reading the newspaper. It comes from what comes to me online. The political situation influences me a lot, especially in my poetry, but it has in my fiction too. You said, "What am I writing now?" Did you ask?
How is your process of writing a new text?
What?
How works your process of writing a new text? How does it work?
How did what work?
Writing a new text, like do you have an inspiration and you start writing, or
Look, inspiration is a bunch of shit. You respond to things. That's all. You respond to things. The more things you're interested in, the more things you respond to.
okay. Thank you so much for answering. Now I'm going to be asking Maria Isabel to ask you our next question.
Hi, Marge. What was the inspiration behind any of your most famous book? Woman on sorry. What was any of your most famous book? Woman on the Edge of Time.
I don't know what you said. Try
É,
again.
Ana, você pode me ajudar?
Hello?
She's asking you what was the inspiration, even though you said inspiration doesn't really matter, but what made you write Woman on the Edge of Time?
Look, I wrote it in 1973. I don't remember. I've published a lot of novels since then and hundreds and hundreds of poems. I don't remember. I think a lot of it was simply okay, why do you write a feminist utopia? We wrote them at that time. There were a number of them because at that time we had a lot of hope. Things seemed to be moving forward. We could spend time thinking about where we wanted to go. Now, nobody writes utopias because we're fighting, trying to hold on to the rights we have and losing them. So nobody's going to write things full of hope at the moment. Instead, you get anti-utopias like The Handmaid's Tale and like the world of he, she, and it that I wrote. It basically, although they come from hope, utopias all feminist utopias are about what we lack. They are all very concerned with childcare, with community, with women relating to each other, with removing the hierarchies, with equality, with companionship, with women allowed to express their sexuality in any form they like, from chastity through almost through lesbianism, through bisexualism, through heterosexualism, through anything they feel like, because it's a natural impulse and people are entitled to express their sexuality as long as they don't hurt other people, however they like. All forms of sexuality are natural. I've had a couple of gay cats. One who fell in love with this rough trade he found, it was living in a tree, and brought him home and loved him passionately. All our expressions of sexuality are natural. They're natural to mammalians. Natural to mammals, I should say. Okay, next question.
The person who will be asking you is going to be Silmara.
Yeah. So, Marge, the world of publishing and literature has changed significantly over the years, as all we know. Um, so, I'd like to know, how do you see the role of women in literature, and what challenges still exist for women writers today, in your opinion?
Getting published. New York publishers, when I was sending out my early novels, there were like 27 publishers in New York. Now there are about 4, and they're all controlled by large multinational corporations, and their aims are not the same as feminist writers. And plus the life of a hardcover book is about the same on the shelves as the yogurt you buy. They come and go very quickly. They really only want bestsellers. So you have to go to the independent presses. Now, there used to be a lot of feminist presses. There are very few openly feminist presses, but there are a lot of presses run by women who tend to be more open to feminist ideas. And there are political presses that are more open, some of them. It's much worse now. When I was in what was that? Something squeaked or tweeted. Anyhow, in in the 80s, into the 90s, 70s, 80s, 90s, a serious midlist writer like me could make good money. Now, a lot of things they expect writers to provide product free. The things are just put on the internet without paying you, often without even attributing to where they came from. It's very hard to make a living as a writer now. I made money in my day because my novels had good advances and because my poetry. I get on planes 2 and 3 times a month, go every place that you could do. My books were published and some of my poetry abroad. I was taken over to Europe. Hello? Every other year. My work has been translated into 23 languages. Now, there's less interest in American writers for obvious reasons. Here we are under the shadow of Trump still, and with Republicans stripping away rights from people of color, from women, from immigrants, from everybody. And the world is burning and nobody seems able to do anything about it or have great desire to do anything about it. If you're of an age to bear children, you have to sometimes feel fury at what they're going to inherit. Did I answer the question? Okay, next.
So, I'd like to back a little bit about your writing process and ask you, since you have written poems, novels, and others, what do you like to read the most and what is harder to you to write?
I make a living writing still. I mean, why do plumbers plumb? Why do carpenters work with wood? I work with words. That's what I do. 6 days a week.
But if you had to choose, which one is your favorite? Do you prefer to write novels or poems or cross
Poems.
poems? Why is that?
Poems. Absolutely poems. You can't make, I can't, as a serious writer, I can't make money off my fiction much anymore. I still publish poems and I get royalties. Though I get paid on ebooks. Ebooks are one of my sources of income. I still do readings. But poems are something you can do under any condition. If you're dying, you can make a poem in your head. If you're in front of a firing squad, you can say a poem. You can write poems in prison, as many writers have. You can write poems under many circumstances. When you're in love, when you're out of love, when you're in nature, when you're out of nature, when you're reading the news, the streaming on the computer where all my political news comes in. Whatever you're doing, you can write a poem. As long as anything you pay enough, there are no poetic subjects. Anything you pay enough attention to, you can write a poem about it. And you can do it in an hour and then revise it in another hour and then revise it again in another hour, stretched over time. But when you're writing, you don't censor. That cold part of your brain you shut off until you're revising. But a novel is like a marriage. You live in it for years. It requires an enormous investiture of time, energy. So I'll never write another novel. The amount of time you put in and what you now get for it isn't worth the time. I'd rather write poems. And I'm writing a book now, which is a Japanese form, Suihitsu. I died last year on October 23rd at 7 in the morning. The rescue squad brought me back to life, but that changed my life. And what I'm writing about is the year after I came into I was given a second life and what I'm trying to do with it.
Okay, thank you. And I have another question about writing. Uh, what do you think you can reach with your writing? And how do you feel about it?
How do I what?
How do you feel about your writing and how they impacted people?
Well, I get a lot of responses from people who use my either relate to one or two of the novels or whatever, and from people with the poems. And my poems, I'm a sort of older type of poet. I don't write for academics. I write for people. And so my poems get used at memorials very often and at weddings and when people give them to each other. or they put them up on the wall. They put them on their refrigerator, whatever. They put them up over their computers. So people relate to the poems. And that's important to me. That's the feedback I get. I don't get much from critics. I get a lot from people who relate to the work. I must hear from them just about every day of my life. I get something from someone who's been moved by one of my works, whatever. And that's important to me.
For sure. I can understand you. I totally do. Now, Anna, can you keep on, please?
Oh, no, no, no. Can't you put the dog out of the room so I can hear you?
Hi, so it's my turn now. Uh, so since we're talking about poetry, while we were searching for this conversation, we stumbled upon your poem called The Low Road, and we noticed how you explore themes of social justice and resistance. And we would like to know if you could share with us what made you write this poem and how does the title reflect the message of this work?
Because it's about organizing, which is the low road. Not being a public figure, not making pronouncements, but getting out and organizing. I was an organizer for many years. I was a good one. I've been politically active just about all of my life. Started in high school, continued in college, and all the time afterwards. I just had an email today from a man who's I guess he goes in and teaches in that women's prison in Virginia. That I actually knew some people who were in prison there. I've had a number of friends I've visited in prison, political prisoners, and he said that uh, he had given the poem to somebody, and they keep making copies of it and passing it around in the prison, and it makes women cry. It makes women feel empowered, and they keep making copies of it in the prison and passing it around. And that moved me a great deal. That was enormously moving to me. I had so many friends who were in prison or jail.
It just shows how important it is to have this fight because since we are people trying to stop it, we should do more and scream louder. Thank you so much for answering. And you mentioned how you love writing poems, and I know it can be hard to remember, but if you could share with us, which one is your favorite poem out of the ones that you've written?
Look, that's like asking someone, which is your favorite child? You better not answer it. People do have favorite children and they fuck up the others. But uh, the, there are poems that I read a lot, like To Be of Use, that I always started off of reading with. Always do. That's the oldest poem I still read often. But there are others. Some poems perform much better than others, and so you read them more. And some are just too long. You'll lose the audience.
Thank you. Now I would like to ask Gabriela to ask her question.
Hello, me again. So, how do you know? How do you see the future of literature?
Uh,
Because
I I don't teach. I do occasional workshops. I think a lot of the teaching of poetry is enough to kill anybody's interest in it. They treat poems as if they were puzzles, where the meaning, you have to get at the meaning. No, you can't see the gesture I'm making. I did a clawing thing. Poems are not hidden things that you have to claw through. You experience them, you feel them. Poems are made of sounds and silences, and you should always experience them out loud because that's what they're made of. There's rhythm, there's imagery, there's all sorts of parts, and there's meaning. But there is no specific meaning for any poem. The poem is yours to interpret. When you've read it, it's yours. You find in it what's meaningful to you, not what's meaningful to an English teacher. You possess the poem. It's yours then. And I might think, wow, why did they think that about it? Well, that's your privilege. It's your privilege to find your poem and poem, your meaning, your what moves you, what works for you. I teach workshops. I've for the last 15 years, I've run a June workshop. It's juried. I get about 100 submissions. I choose 12 poets to work with. I ask for, I don't want a curriculum vitae. I don't want to know anything. I just want to see 5 of your best poems. And if I think I can take you into a higher level, I will put you in the workshop, even if you've never published, even if you've published 6 books. There's always an enormous range of experience, but I go by the poems, and I pick people I think I can work with. And people do, just except for a couple of crazies and lazies. Almost everyone who's taken the workshop has had books out. I really can take poets to a higher level because it's a craft workshop. There's no bullshit. There's no woo-woo. It's a craft workshop. First day imagery, second day oral effects, third day line length, etc., etc.
When you said the poem is ours, I remember what we have studied. It's not about what the author wants to tell us, but what we can take from it.
He understands. He knows. He's a poet.
Yes. So, Sumara, it's your turn now.
Yes, my turn. So Marge, I recently saw a series where the character said that writing always costs something. So I would like to know if writing costs you anything.
Costs me anything? Is that what you're
Yes,
asking?
costs you anything.
Well, when I was writing Woman on the Edge of Time, I stopped being able to sleep for a while because I was so immersed in it. And I had to learn to disconnect when I'm done working for the day. I mean, when you're asleep, you may solve problems, but if you don't let go of what you're doing, it isn't good for you. But I don't think poems cost me anything except making other people mad. When I read my rape poem, there's always a guy who walks out in the middle of it. Attacked a lot. But yeah, I don't take that seriously. I'm not somebody who has a great need to please, except the people I love and the people I'm telling the truth to. Them I want to please. And of course, everybody wants to please the people you feel share your values. You want to feel you're trying to live up to them. So those people you want to please. But I don't care if Trumpers would like to burn me alive. I really don't care. Next question.
So in the same line of reasoning, um, I I'd like to know, how do you see the role of art in literature in contemporary society? Especially in an increasingly digital and globalized world.
I think books are dying, but I'll be dead soon. So, people are getting dumber and dumber in the United States because many people don't read anymore, and you don't absorb the same way, and you don't think the same way when you're seeing things streaming or on uh, on the internet or whatever. You don't interact with it in the same way.
Uh, so, do you think people still read read novels like they used to?
No.
And why
When
not?
I was younger, when you'd get together with friends, you'd talk about what you're reading. You get together now, people talk about what they've seen on television or streaming. People don't. It's most people I know don't even go to movies anymore because they all come at a minimal price. It costs too much. I haven't been in a movie theater since well before COVID. It just costs too much. I can see the same thing free or cheap at home and don't have to worry about the people behind me talking or saying, "Oh, you know what happens next? She's gonna kill him." Or the dirty seats, the gum stuck under them. And if you want to get up and pee in the middle of a movie, you're not going to miss anything at home. I'm a vulgar woman. I grew up on the streets of Detroit. I grew up poor in a predominantly black neighborhood where you had to fight and where we hated the cops. They were the enemy. And I'm still a street kid at heart. I don't say intercourse, I say fuck. Uh, that's my background. Detroit is a tough place. It's a tough and violent place, and everything is clear. You see the class divisions. You understand the racial divisions. Part of why we lived in a black neighborhood is Jews weren't allowed to live in places where white people were. We weren't. I wasn't white till I went to college. Now anti-Semitism is back, just like it was when I was a child.
It shows how society appears to be in this cycle when we think we're over something in returns.
Oh, when Obama was elected, I thought, oh, we've finally grown up.
But now we need to hope for a better future. Well, You mentioned how you had an experience last year that changed your view, changed the way that you write. And you mentioned that you're working in some poems inspired by Japanese ones. Is that it?
By what?
Japanese style.
Oh, I've written haiku and haikus, yes, but no, not that much. It's just I discovered I'd started writing after I was revived when I finally got out of the hospital. Uh, I started writing the day I came home, and I wrote a narrative that was interspersed with poems and occasional essays on various things. And I had no idea what the form was. And then I learned it's Zuihitsu, a Japanese form that goes back 1,000 years to the Pillow Book. And it's what I'm doing now. I have no idea if anybody will want to publish it. It's not a Western form, but it's what I need to do now. It's what I'm comfortable in, what I need, or if not comfortable, it's what I need.
Thank you so much. It's beautiful to see how a writer changes through certain situations. Professor said we have some questions from the viewers.
We have
I
a next special.
I've been extremely lucky. I had uh, a marriage to a Holocaust survivor, but who did not see me and I didn't see him. I was marrying the French left. I was marrying a Holocaust survivor. I was marrying Paris. I was marrying everything but Michelle. And he was a good person, but we were completely incompatible. Couldn't see my writing as anything but a hobby that I would give up to have and raise children. My second husband, it brought me out of poverty. And I was very grateful to him for that. I like being middle class. I remember the first time he gave me put me on his American Express card, and I went into a department store in San Francisco and bought a new winter coat. And that I will never forget the thrill of the satisfaction with being able to buy something that was new and actually fit me. I never forget what it was like to be poor. People who've never been poor have all sorts of myths about poverty. There's such shit. The governor, I think of Mississippi, said, "I am poor are poor because they're lazy." People who are poor work 3 times as hard as people who are middle class. Often they have 2 or 3 jobs, and they get paid so little that they have to have that many jobs to survive. And they're always when you're poor, you're always having to choose between, well, will I get my tooth yanked? I won't have enough money to have it filled, or will I pay the heating bill, or will I buy food? It's nobody who judges other people by their possessions is worth listening to. Oh, you have a Rolex watch. That makes you special. It doesn't keep time any better than my Timex, but you're special because you can have these fancy things. We're so involved with what things we have. Very sad. And growing up, there was respect for work that doesn't exist anymore. We don't respect the people who do the necessary things.
So,
All
Marge,
feminist utopias do.
We have a next special request from our audience. They are asking if you can read one poem for us today.
So there was two different things. Okay. No, I don't think about that. I write what I feel is truthful and important, and what people do with it is their business. Uh,
No problems.
I'm happy when things are translated. Some, and, but oftentimes I have no idea if the translation's any good. I mean, when a book comes to me in Japanese, it could be a dog about how to raise your how a book about how to raise your dog. I don't know.
And just like Abby asked, we would like to ask you if you could read one poem for us. It's also
Okay.
from the audios and from us.
Oh, you'll have to forgive me for now. I'll have to go. Okay. Where's my most recent book? Well, I have Made in Detroit. That's just a moment. Let me see if I can get that. I'll be right back.
While Marge is getting the book for her to read one of her poems, I would like to show people that she has been published here in Brazil. This was the novel that was her first publication here in Brazil, Uma Mulher no Limiar do Tempo, A Woman on the Edge of Time, and the translation was made by me. Then it's very special to have her and to be able to do that. And I think she doesn't know that. It's kind of like brand new, but I have started translating another of her novels, He, She, and It.
Oh,
So
good.
yeah, in the near future, we are going to have uh, uh, the second novel of hers being published here in Brazil.
I'll read a poem about my mother called The Scent of Apple Cake. My mother cooked as drudgery the same 15 dishes round and round, like a donkey bound to a millstone grinding dust. My mother baked as a dance, the flour falling from the sifter in a rain of fine white pollen. The sugar was sweet snow. The dough beneath her palms was the warm flesh of a baby when they were all hers before their wells sprouted like mushrooms. Cookies she formed in rows on the baking sheets, oatmeal, molasses, lemon, chocolate chip, delights anyone could love. Love was in short supply, but pies were obedient to her command of their pastry, crisp, holding the sweetness within. Desserts were her reward for endless cleaning in the acid yellow cloud of Detroit, begging dollars from my father, mending, darning, bleaching. In the oven she made sweetness, where otherwise there was none.
So beautiful. Thank you so much. The imageries and the ending was amazing. It
Yeah.
is amazing. I think Xiomara will ask you your next question. Again, thank you so much for reading for us.
Let's see. I'll read one more. I'm just trying to find something I feel like reading. Okay.
So, March, another classic question.
Oh, sure.
Uh, what advice would you give aspiring writers, especially those who want to address social issues in their writing?
Read poetry, read fiction. If you write memoir, read memoir. If you write short stories, read short stories. Read widely, but read like a writer. Ask yourself how they're doing what they're doing. You learn as much from things you don't like as you do from things you do, because you ask yourself, why didn't I like it? Why doesn't it work for me? What are they lacking? How could they have done it? And then when things really move you, how did they do it? How did they move me? How did they do these things? That's reading like a writer, and that's how you learn. It isn't like you're learning to imitate. It's like you're looking at the craft and figuring out how you can do it. We're almost out of time.
Thank
We
you
have
so
about
much.
4 minutes. So, is anybody left with a question?
I think from our end, we are done. We would like to know if anybody in the audience would like to ask a question. We've already done our last one was about creative writing and your advice. Thank you so much for giving it to us.
Well, I just gave my advice.
Marge, do you have anything like we didn't ask, but you would like to talk about any of your like experiences lately with writing, with reading as well? Like I don't know what you have been reading, but if you have read anything you really liked lately.
I'm reading a fascinating book called What an Owl Knows. I read a lot of nonfiction as well as a lot of poetry and some fiction. But the I what interests me, well, I tell you the magazines I get. You'll get some idea. I get an American and a British archaeology magazine. I'm fascinated by archaeology. Well, how did people live in the past? What happened? How do societies change? And I also get science news and natural history. Uh, I, I, I like to learn things. I, I love learning things. So, and then I get a couple of cat newsletters from places like Tufts and uh, it's Cornell that have very good veterinary departments. They put out these newsletters because I have 3 cats and I like to keep up on the newest things, what I should be doing and not doing. What else do I get? A local newspaper, which is wonderful. It's the only newspaper I read. I get all the rest of my news online. Uh, most I look at CNN, but I also I get the leftist stuff and the feminist stuff. Uh, I deal with about 150 emails every day from people, mostly people wanting things. Uh, let's see. I loved All the Light We Cannot See. I like that a lot. That's one of the books. I read another of his novels, which I liked, but not as well. That really got me. Well, I did because I haven't. Well, gone to. I did an enormous amount of research for Gone to Soldiers, so I was embedded in World War II. And also, I put things in it that I knew. I grew up during World War II.
All right. So thank you so much for being here with us and answering some of our questions. I mean, all of our questions, in fact.
I
And
did my best.
yeah, we could not see you, but we heard you, and we could
And I got
work.
all dressed up for you.
Nah, yeah, I know. Me too. I put like shirt and everything, and I was hoping to see you. But we are going to uh, have maybe something. We're going to try some different tool, and in the future we will be able to see each other just a little bit.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, well, thank you. And it's nice to see you again.
Thank you,
I
girls.
hope
Do you have
all,
anything to say, like some kind of
I
last
hope
word?
all is well with you.
Yes.
I won't ask you about your personal life in front of the students, but I'd love to know what's going on.
Okay, I'll write to you like with
Do
the
stay
latest
in
gossip.
touch.
Yeah.
Stay in touch. I
Yes, I will.
really am very fond
Definitely.
of you. I view you as a good friend, and I'd like to stay in touch.
Okay, I will do that.
Good.
Girls?
I just wanted to say that while doing our research for this, I was very interested in your novel, and I'm saving some money in order to buy online, even small changes.
Uh,
I know it's an older one, but I really like the synopsis, and I'm really interested, but I haven't read it yet.
my historical novels are important because what I'm interested in is women's hidden roles. Women were very important in the French Revolution. That's when modern feminism started. So that's why I wrote City of Darkness, City of Light about the French Revolution. Because people forget. And in World War II, in Gone to Soldiers, I was dealing with a lot of women's roles. And women just get pushed out of history. We're invisible. And if you get old, you really get invisible. There's so much ageism now. Everything should be new and shiny.
Well, I only want to thank you for your patience, your answers, our conversation, and the opportunity, of course, to know you and do this.
I have to get off now.
Okay,
So it's
so we
been
are going
wonderful
to
to meet you all. And thank you for having me.
thank you.
Thank you.
Yes,
Bye.
I